thought he was going to comment too.
8:37 here, Big 550, KTRS. Brenda Talent joins us from the Show Me Institute. Always good to see you, Brenda. Good morning this morning.
Good morning, McGraw.
Your old friend David Stokes was in today.
Oh, he was?
He was talking about the rivers. He was just got back from Washington, so an alum of the Show Me Institute on to bigger and better things. So you're growing a lot of good talent there at the Show Me Institute. What are we talking about today?
Today, we're going to talk about the Committee on Simple, Fair, and Low Taxes, which studying the tax system in the state of Missouri, and supposedly will issue a report to the governor on June 30th, making recommendations about what we can do to modernize our tax system and make it one that's more attractive for economic growth.
And more fair and more simple?
That too. Those are in the title.
What are what are some of the things they're looking at, or what do they want to look at?
Well, right now they form subcommittees, and they're actually having town halls. They received comments earlier this year. They're having a town hall today in Hannibal, and then in early June they'll have one in Cape Girardeau and in Springfield. They had one in Maryville, Missouri. Now, I do think it's legitimate to ask, if they're having town halls, why aren't we seeing a town hall in Kansas City or St. Louis?
It's a legitimate question.
But so we really don't know what they're thinking. There was a study commission on state tax policy that issued a report at the end of last year. This was a committee created by the General Assembly, which made it what I would call tinkering at the edges, things about, eliminating economic development credits, things about perhaps reducing the top rate, tinkering with the rate itself, looking at the multiplicity of exemptions we have in our sales tax. So I think the real question will be, will this committee come up with something, big in trying to modernize our tax system, or will it be more of, well, here's the system we've got, here are things we can do to make it better?
So from what I understand, the Missouri state tax is a 6% income tax, right?
Unless you're in the city of St. Louis or Kansas City, in which case it'll be 7%.
It'll be 7%, but it's 6% over $9,000 or whatever.
Right, right.
If you make over 6 or 9, whatever, you pay 6% right off the top. So it's a flat rate, in a sense, in the state.
Right, but it begins at a very low threshold.
Right. And so we would like to see it raised, maybe 20, 25,000, 30,000?
Well, that's one thing you can talk about, changing the brackets. I mean, other states can begin as at 75,000. I mean, there are states that don't trigger their tax rates until you're much higher in the income brackets. You can also talk about reducing the rates overall.
Right.
But there are other things too. In fact, McGraw, let me ask you, if I made you tax czar
Oh boy.
of the state of Missouri,
Yes.
and you could change anything about our taxing system, what are they? Let's just say 2, 3 things that you would want to do.
Wow, that's a really interesting question. What were the 2 or 3 things I'd like to do? I don't know how to do it, but I think the property tax system is completely flawed.
Okay.
I don't know, but I would like to re-look at how that would be done, because a business gets, one's only assessed at 20% of the value, somebody's assessed at 100% of the value, and then it's supposed to then correlate between the rate and the I mean, it's a disaster.
Right.
So
I would agree.
That would be 1. And then 2, I would say I would force the state of Missouri to charge sales tax on internet sales.
Okay.
Those are the 2 things I would do.
Those are 2. Well, the first one you mentioned is actually enshrined in our Constitution. So when we talk about changing our tax system,
Right.
it might not just be about statutes and what legislatively can be done.
Right.
It may also be taking a look at the Missouri Constitution, which has, I want to say it's like 26 different sections relating to taxation.
Right.
We've got provisions that preclude the taxation now of services. That was enacted last year.
Right.
And so when you're really looking at what can we do to modernize our tax system, I think we've got a challenge in this state.
Well, we've got a challenge overall, because these tax incentives or tax breaks aren't there by accident. Big, rich, powerful people have been able to get the ear of a legislator or a legislative branch or whatever to get that enacted. So it's awful hard once it's enacted to get it out because the big, powerful lobbyists are down there.
Well, and realize that some of these provisions are enacted to get around our Hancock Amendment, which is in our Constitution.
Right.
So, for example, the economic tax credits came about because that was a way of getting around the trigger of Hancock for triggering refunds if the state generated too much revenue.
Right.
We also have this multiplicity of sales tax districts. Why? Because if you create something called a transportation,
Yes.
right?
Right.
You as the developer could be the sole voter in approving a sales tax
Right.
increase.
That's another scam that they're pulling.
So there are abuses within the system that have been designed to allow people to create taxation for funding what they view as good things. But really, I think the challenge for this committee is being able to step back and really look at the whole picture and I'll use a cliche, think outside the box here about what we can do to make our state more attractive.
But everybody talks about lowering taxes. Everyone we send to whatever elected body talks about a fair, flatter tax. And it seems like, for 50 years now, we keep getting a more diverse, more arcane tax structure where normal people have to spend $1,000 to have somebody do their taxes because they can't figure it out.
Right, and you would hope that maybe they could engage in some dynamic scoring, because one of the charges that a lot of these commissions or committees impose upon themselves is being revenue neutral. And how you score the impact of tax policy changes will also impact whether you're revenue neutral or not.
Right. And every business I talk to says, I would just like to make my pizzas. I just like to sell my tires. I just want to build my windows. Why do I have to become a tax expert on all this?
Right. And wouldn't you like to be able to prepare your tax return in less than 30 minutes?
Yes. I remember Ronald Reagan, right? A note card. Imagine a day where you can fill out your taxes in a 3x5 note card. Now, kids today don't know what a 3x5 note card is. But, yes, I'd love to. But there's a whole lot of infrastructure on tax software and accountants who are making a nice living making sure we don't fill out our taxes in 15 minutes.
And tax lawyers. So here maybe is our phrase. We want an app for that.
We want an app for that. It's a crazy world we live in. All right, Brenda Town. So we'll look forward to the Simpler, Fair, and Low Taxes meeting that's going on around the state. Where can we find out more?
ShowMeInstitute.org. Come visit us.
Brenda Town, thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
8:44, big